The whole red pill movement, when they say masculinity, I don't know that anybody's actually defining what that is. What does it actually mean to be masculine?
Would y'all say that it's more masculine to be celibate and not married?
When it comes to the red pill movement, they really are extremely feminine, extremely weak, addicted to sexuality.
They do make some valid arguments in terms of how men get screwed over, no-fault divorce.
Marriage is a slavery to women.
Would Jesus be considered a high-value man in today's society?
This was something that almost made me leave the church, to be honest.
Tell the few people listening right now, kind of overall, what kind of content do you cover?
Yeah, so I pretty much cover literally anything that has to do with Catholicism. Well, not anything, but like mainly the social teachings of the church that I really enjoy talking about with sex. I just tweeted about that, the sexual stuff with Catholicism. Also I would say that the social teachings as well as the authority aspect of it. Because I think one thing that really led me to Christianity was just the whole anti-relativism, the whole anti-my truth, your truth thing. So to be arguing against relativism has a root in authority, that you think that there is a hierarchy and authority and how we're supposed to be living, how a religion is supposed to be structured in that. So those are like my two main things, like the structure of authority and sex.
Do you do like any social or political commentary or segueing into that a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. I like to plug in the church and state stuff, but I used to be into talking about the more like secular stuff, like BLM and all that other stuff, right? Trump as well, and gun control. But like frankly, I don't care about those issues anymore, or I do, but like I just see some other things like way more important. I was in a conversation with my buddy the other day, and we were both like in agreement, like the main thing here is essentially the saving of souls, right? I mean, we want to elect good candidates and like we want to get good advance politically, but as influencers, I mean, like another like a huge thing would be essentially is like we want to be converting hearts. So yeah, that's pretty much my main thing now.
No, I completely agree. Actually, I think a lot of, especially when it comes to political commentators or like young people who are trying to, break into speaking about the current events or the state of affairs, they usually tend to initially focus on, the social issues or Donald Trump or Joe Biden, whatever it is. And then even lately, I feel like everything that you could possibly need to say has already been said. And now I'm like, you know what? This year, my focus is more exactly what you said. My mission is to save souls. Like some people are in this movement to just win votes, but at the end of the day, it's really about saving souls for Jesus Christ. And so that's, why I speak up. We also got Lily Kate in here. She's awesome. She does great content on feminism, anti-feminism. So she's going to be co-hosting today as well. And we've got a few other great people in here tonight.
Yo, Lily Kate, isn't she that feminist? Yo.
I'm the most feminist you'll ever imagine.
Whoa.
I hate men, and have pink hair, and I'm really fat and ugly. It's the worst.
No, just not the pink hair.
I'll take it.
I'm kidding.
But no, glad to be here, and I love the sentiment because it really is about saving souls. And I know it's fun. It's really fun to make content, and it's really fun to go to protests, and it's really fun to do all of that. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting DMs from people saying, hey, like, what drugs are you on? Like, what is this Jesus drug? Like, how can I be part of it? Like, what are you doing? Are you really doing the right thing? And, it's important for it to be the Christian conversation 100%. But, I've been able to speak around the nation to so many young women about, hey, what is feminism trying to steal from you? It's trying to steal your femininity. And, just the blessing of getting to unleash women into their femininity, when they feel like feminism has put this life out for them, this cookie cutter life of, I have to follow this. I have to go to college. I have to get a job. I have to be defiant. I have to be brutal. I have to hate men. All those things. Seeing women getting that like unraveled in their mind is so beautiful. It's such a beautiful thing. And honestly, like for girls, I don't know if this is true of guys, but embracing femininity is like a gateway drug to being able to really submit to the authority of Christ. For guys, it's probably like embracing masculinity allows you to really be led by someone else, aka Christ. But, you know, it's kind of like talking about it and inspiring women is more of a roundabout way to get to the end goal of saving souls. So I just wanted to put that out there because it's a really beautiful thing.
Well, the submission aspect of the male is also I think that doesn't get talked about that much as in, you know, the red pill circles. And not even just that, I think even Christian circles as well. They don't talk about the male submission that we're supposed to have for, you know, as a Catholic. I want to say not just, you know, Jesus ultimately, but as well as the godly authorities that Jesus has put on earth to shepherd us. So I think that I think that's something that like male masculinity should be honestly like something that gets more emphasized in our modern day culture. So yeah, too many people are very individualistic. Like, no, I'm sovereign. I'm independent. I'm my own. Like, you know, it's just like, it's good to, you know, provide for yourself. But I think there's a level of, you know, I don't know if idolatry would be the right way to say it, but just, Militant Thomist has his hand up. Let's go. Yo, you want to say something?
What's up, Franco? How are you, man?
I'm doing great.
I just came up here to actually be side by side with the legend Christian Wagner.
Yo, what's up?
It's an honor, bro. Yeah, like, so I think that the you know, this whole debate's been coming up, and I kind of got into it a little bit with what's his name, Chase. I didn't get into it with him, but I was quote tweeting him about being on that show. You know, he kind of brought up that whole red pill versus Christ pill phenomenon. They're trying to debate it. And I started to question whether or not, like, even a Christian being on that show, whatever, you know, podcast is actually prudent, you know, in the sense of, I understand, like, people want to preach about Christ and wherever we can, but you know, that whole show has been set up to really have a certain type of person flock to it. And it's almost like, you know, it's like they're treating it like go out into the streets, you know, and be around the sinners. But it's really what they're doing is, you know, in order to get views, they want to bring the sinners in. Anyways, my point being is this, that I think that what he gets right is that the whole red pill movement, at the end of the day, when they say masculinity, and when anybody says masculinity, I don't know that anybody's actually defining what that is. Like, what does it actually mean to be masculine? Well, in the outward appearance, right, the externals, it's going to be, you know, doing all the things that men do, and you know, that's having a great physique and, you know, being dominant, the alpha male, so on and so forth. But no one has questioned whether or not that's really what masculinity means from a Christian perspective. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I think that a definition of terms is something that people really ought to spend some time on to kind of figure out what it actually means, because I feel like a lot of these people focus on I don't know, pagan standards for this sort of thing. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. I want to quickly read this Bible verse because I think it's like a great, I mean, I think to get that definition, we should look to scripture and the catechism, which is like, you know, I'll read from scripture right now because I haven't, this is like the first thing that I thought of as soon as you said that we need a definition. And here, you know, it talks about leadership in 1 Timothy 3. And it says, you know, now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. And it keeps on going here. And I think it's like, you know, ultimately, and this is the thing with the Christ pill, right? I mean, ultimately, you can't just, you know, the red pill, when it tries to appeal to a secular ideology, it's going to be very subjective because there's no singular centralized authority that is going to definitively say what is masculinity, what is femininity, what is like the authentic versions of both of those things. So we need to look to an ultimate authority, which as Christians, we would say is God, the Christian God. And so that's where we would find the answer in God's word.
Can I say just one last piece to that? Just like to add like a juxtaposition to this. What if you were to tell the red pill movement virginity is masculinity?
Based?
Go off, King. So true.
Based?
So true.
It's so true.
In marriage.
Here,
In marriage.
It's so real. Hey, I saw Joe and Ryan say, who had their hand first?
You let Ryan go first.
Okay, cool. Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think masculinity, man, should be modeled completely and totally off Jesus. You don't get more masculine than Jesus, the God of the universe, the person who invented masculinity. He's the chief example of it. And we should always be looking to him as our example on what healthy masculinity looks like. Jesus he was described as meek, and a lot of people see that as like kind of like weak. But it doesn't mean weakness or meekness doesn't mean weakness. It means power reserved. So Jesus had like the full power to totally obliterate his enemies, and he reserved that power, held it back for a perfect time, and at the end of the age, he will defeat evil. He will defeat his enemies. And I think, we would do well to kind of follow his lead, because sometimes, there's a time and place where we can, demonstrate our strength, and a time and place to show restraint. And I think if we're going to be modeling healthy masculinity, then we need to model essentially the same life that Jesus lived, and walk in grace and truth, but also boldness, and just be unafraid and unapologetic to say what we need to say and stand up for those who can't stand for themselves. And I think we can see, the tide shift when we start to model our masculinity off of Jesus and also other people in the Bible. I think, the fathers of faith definitely set a good example for what healthy masculinity looks like, and also an example of what bad masculinity looks like. We see, David falling into temptation with, Bathsheba, and that causes a whole host of issues. So we have the warning signs of kind of the unhealthy behavior, and we need to look at that as a cautionary tale so that we don't make the same pitfalls, that we're seeing kind of in the red pill movement, and divorce from doing what is morally right.
Real. And in honor of 1 Timothy 2:12, I'm going to let Joe go first before the ladies, and also because he had his hand up first.
Thanks, Franco. No, I appreciate it. I just want to break down a little bit with exactly what Militant Thomist was saying and what Ryan was saying, both at the same time. I think it's important to understand where we depart from the pagans specifically when it comes to masculinity. Now, at the time, there was two popular systems of philosophy that were developed to deal with one's suffering, and that was hedonism and stoicism. Now, obviously, there was different degrees of stoicism and hedonism at the time. There was obviously Epicurean hedonism, which was a little less extreme than I forget what the other type was called. But the idea was with, hedonism was, in order to cope with your suffering, you just do the things that, make you feel pleasurable. And as far as stoicism goes, in order to cope with the sufferings of life, you just choose not to feel anything. And obviously, like I said, there's different degrees to all of that. This is one of the coolest things about Christianity, is that Christianity said, no, that's not how we're going to do this. This is not how we're going to do masculinity. What Christ did for us by dying on the cross was he actually allowed us, and he allowed every single one of us this opportunity to lay down the suffering that we have in our lives at the foot of the cross, to lay down and unburden ourselves of all the weights of either our actions, of our traumas, of basically everything that we've gone through in our entire lives. Now, that said, as a man, as somebody who's engaged in a leadership role, I've said this many times, you shouldn't be an unfeeling person. You should be a person that demonstrates complete control, specifically in the husband role over your family, or especially in a pastor role over a church. Your job is not to be an unfeeling, cold person, as the red pill people would say. And it's also not to be a whiny little brat like, a lot of fathers are today, where they actually don't demonstrate either of these, either either of the traits of Stoicism or hedonism. They're basically obsessed with, these feelings and feeling all the time and all this feelings of this, that, and the other. The whole point of Christianity is that it's saying you're supposed to take your thoughts captive. That's what St. Paul says. You're supposed to take your thoughts captive. And once you do take your thoughts captive, what you can do is you can save it for the right time. And then when you find the right time, you can feel those emotions. There's a Greek word for it called kairos. And I feel like if you understand that distinction, if you understand the purpose of the cross, you understand the purpose of kairos, that you can really embody, Catholic masculinity fully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great. That was a great monologue. I just want to say though, real quick, we do want to keep it for everybody here that's gonna be speaking and that has already spoken. We want to keep the monologues a little shorter because we have a lot of people that we're trying to get to. So yeah, but that was fire, Joe. That was fire. Emma, I believe I saw your hand first.
Hi, well, I'm Emma. First of all, I'm a mom, and I have a 14-year-old son. So my husband and I are, we're struggling, because our son is very open with us about a lot of things that happen, and he told us that his friends at 14 years old are very sexually active and have mocked him for not even kissing a girl yet. So my thing is, give me a second. What the red pill manosphere and feminism is missing, it's missing Christ. A question that I would ask these red pillars and these feminists that claim to be Christians is, well, would Jesus be considered a high value man in today's society? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought
that was a rhetorical question.
Jesus,
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, Jesus showed something that a lot of these red pillars and these red pillars, I don't know what you call them, these manosphere people, they lack compassion. They lack compassion above all things. They say they're Christian men, that they're godly men, but where is their compassion? Jesus was all about compassion, and he didn't treat women as inferior to him. And a Bible verse that I remember is, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. By today's societal standards, Jesus, his disciples, they wouldn't be considered high value men. Jesus defied all of these societal norms. He prioritized humility, compassion, and service over status, wealth, and physical attractiveness. And yet you hear these young men speak, and they're all about their status, worldly. They're about how much income they're making, and things that are not going to matter here in the next life. And you can read all about this in Matthew, Mark, Luke. So again, I just want to end it with, if young men are struggling with, what masculinity is or what being a high value man is, they need to look at who Jesus was, especially if they claim to be Christian men. So I know I get a lot of, hate being a woman, when I speak out about this stuff, because they tell me, well, you're a woman, you don't know what it's like to be a male in today's society. You don't know anything about masculinity, but I do have a son. And being the mother of a son, I know that it would destroy me if my son were to see women as nothing more than sexual conquests, or would prioritize wealth and status over living a Christ-like life.
No, you're 100% on point. You're 100% on point. Lily, go ahead.
I'm a lot older than you, so
I wanted to chime in on that really quickly.
For letting me put my input in there.
Emma?
Morgan, did you say you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in. Hi, Emma.
Hi, I'm sorry, I don't know who this is. I'm still trying to learn all of this X thing.
You can't see who I am, Morgan, Ariel?
No, I have it on speaker. Okay.
Oh,
Morgan.
Yeah. Yeah, so, it just made me think, right? Because you said, as a woman, you're speaking out and people get upset. And I think that we're in this position with the red pill because Christian men have not been stepping up into the office of the leadership roles that they're supposed to hold, in Christianity. And so that's why these men have just been looking for other outlets, and that's where the red pill came from. So I think that it's really important to continue to have these conversations, and for men to just stand up and speak out and be, godly leaders, for men to be able to follow after and actually be living a righteous life too, because I think a lot of people think that Christians are hypocrites. So it's also just important that men are, walking the walk. That way these younger men can see what it's like to live a biblical, godly life. And I just want to encourage any of the men on here to just keep speaking out, step up, don't be afraid to speak out. And also, I think that we're starting to see a little bit of a shift. It started, the last couple of days here, where people are kind of pushing back against the red pill, because it's been going strong for the last year and a half, I would say, and no one was really opposing it much. So I think that there's a shift, and this is the perfect time for men of God to, step into all that God has for them and lead these younger men to Christ.
So true. Let's go in order. That was good. Lily K, go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks. So much greatness is happening here, but masculinity generally has been very, very much bought out by materialism. And how do we know that? It's because what men in the red pill movement strive for is symbols of status, essentially. High body counts. They want the Lambos. They want to see how many women that they can reject and just view in a terrible way. And that's how we know feminism has been completely bought out by materialism. The red pill movement totally has. Masculinity generally has been bought out by materialism, just because we've kind of turned into a society that praises hedonic sludge as opposed to actual virtue. I think masculinity and femininity alike, because they're a lot more, it's funny because we like to think they're completely mutually exclusive and different. They're actually wildly similar. I've been on a 2-year journey, trying to essentially find a definition, obviously from the Bible, of what masculinity and femininity both are. And I've come down to just simply virtue expressed by a man, virtue expressed by a woman. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter the tone in which you, your accent. It doesn't matter all these different things. It doesn't have to look one specific way, what you wear or your cars, right? It's literally just virtue expressed by a certain sex. But we also know that the red pill movement is a full-on reaction to feminism. It's a reaction of little boys who have been hurt by these gosh darn awful women who are purposely trying to tear them up. And these men say, well, shoot, this. Oh, can y'all hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. These guys are so butthurt about what feminism has done because it's made women at large reject them. But in the end, who's going to come out on the bottom, right? Women reject men. Men say, fine, we're going to have this red pill movement. We're going to use you. We're going to abuse you. We're going to dishonor your bodies. We're going to choose material things over you. We're going to just run through you at our own pleasure. And women come out on bottom. So it's just really silly because women's rejection has bred this red pill movement. Feminist rejection has bred the red pill movement. And with that, women are coming out with less. So it's just so funny is because I think feminism is the root of literally all evil. Because I've read Genesis chapter 3, and it's just really interesting that women have made the bed and now we're sleeping in it, and now no one's married, no one's happy. Masculinity is all screwed up because feminism has taken root into women's minds.
All right. Christian, you want to go?
Yeah, I have to go in a second, but I guess I'll give my little spiel on what I think about the red pill movement, since I don't really, this isn't really my thing. I don't really talk about this much, so I guess I'll come at this from my own perspective, which is as a sort of student of Catholic theology and a student especially of our great spiritual and ascetical tradition. But really, what strikes me first, and what strikes me most centrally with the red pill movement, has to do with the complete lack of asceticism in there. And in Catholic moral theology, there's really kind of two central axioms.
You said aestheticism, like aesthetics,
like aesthetic, like, you know.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, not
sure
like pretty things, but like denying yourself, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So when it comes to denying yourself, I guess I'll keep it with that language. That's really one of the central points of Catholic moral theology. I mean, one point is loving God. The other point is hating yourself. And by hating yourself, I don't mean despising you as the image of God. What I mean by that is I mean to release yourself from all attachments. I've noticed a lot of you have been speaking about men's leadership over, you know, women, or men's submission to hierarchy. But really, the true Christian moral vision is a complete mastery of self for the sake of God, which means that one is completely detached from created goods. So when we look into something like the book of Job, for those who aren't familiar, he's a man of God. He loses basically his entire family, his entire house, all of his possessions. And he's able to turn around and he's able to say, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the Lord. And what's the reason for that? The reason for that is he's detached. He doesn't put his ultimate value and his ultimate love in those things that he has. So when it comes to the red pill movement, they really are extremely effeminate and extremely weak, addicted to sexuality and addicted to things. I mean, it's completely weak. When you read somebody like St. Thomas Aquinas, when he reads 1 Corinthians 7, he says something a bit funny. He says that marriage is a slavery to women, because the married man, due to a certain weakness that he talks about earlier in 1 Corinthians 7, the married man needs the companionship of a woman. And that necessity of a companionship of a woman is a certain weakness. It's something which is allowed and something that's redeemed by Christ, but a certain weakness. So in the sort of red pill sphere, if you need you need your genitals to be pleasured in order for you to, have a fulfilled life, that's really, an animalistic sort of way of living. You eat food, own things, and have sex, and therefore, you're fulfilled. Christ doesn't call us that. Christ calls us to poverty, which is freedom from external things, chastity, which is freedom from the pleasures of the body, and then obedience, which is freedom from, self-will. And these evangelical councils practiced both by the clerics and in a certain way by the layman. That's the ultimate freedom that one has. That's the ultimate masculine warring with the self that the church fathers speak about when they talk about the perfection of the moral life. So that's all I had to say from the perspective of somebody interested in Catholic theology.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, that's not to say that marriage is like a sin or something. Like I think some people might be scrupulous and might get that conclusion from what you just said.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think that
what the theologians
like people
say
should
is that
get
it's
married.
Yeah, no, because here's it.
When St. Paul talks about it, St. Paul speaks of it as a certain permission. Permission that we have, that those who, due to the weakness of the flesh and the effects of the fall, need this, that's something which is redeemed in Christ. Yeah, but virginity and chastity is something which is superior to marriage, which is a Catholic dogma.
And that is something, and this is something that a lot of people don't really talk about in the red pill and Christian pill. To be honest, I think that the priesthood, the celibacy aspect is really forgotten a lot. I mean, in the Bible, it does talk about it. I mean, I forget, but the verse talks about, it is better to not be married, but if it's better to not burn in passion. Though. Yeah. So it's not. And again, people that are scrupulous might take that to mean like, oh, well, aren't you saying that it's sinful? No, that's not what we're saying, because God cannot allow anything that is sinful, but it is something that is for people that have that are in that of less being able to of less control, they are allowed that, and it's a beautiful thing that can allow for the procreation of generations, essentially. And that's why most people are called to marriage, with a very small minority called to the celibacy. So again, that duality is very important to talk about, and I think that it's the celibacy thing. I think the reason why so many people are failing to really criticize the red pill movement effectively is because they don't understand the celibate aspect, the virtue of celibacy, and like they just kind of idolize, like, oh no, we'll just have children no matter what. It's like, well, hold on, like we're against the leftists saying they don't want children because they want to keep having sex and separate procreation from the sexual aspect. But we're not. But like the whole thing of not having kids, like if you're doing that for the celibacy, like how Jesus did and how some apostles did it, and like other disciples throughout the generations did, that's virtuous. That's very, very virtuous. But yeah, Meta Thomist, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. I'll riff on what Christian was saying. I think it's important too to understand, like, when you bring up, it kind of sounded like, marriage is a sin or something like that. Like even in marriage, this chastity is required of the married man, which is even further pursuance of the virtue of chastity that a man ought to master. And I think that there are a lot of Christian men just in general who think that all is, lawful, right? Inside of a marriage, it doesn't really matter what happens because you guys are married, and anything that happens in the confines of that marriage is allowed. But the attachment to sin is a very important nuance when it comes to understanding sin. So like St. Francis de Sales, for example, talks about the purgations, right? The initial purgation, the first purgation, which is, in Catholic, in Catholic theology, for those who aren't Catholic, the first purgation is, getting rid of mortal sin, but the second is attachment to sin. And so, he likened it to the Jews in the desert who left, right? Who left Egypt. But they were basically crying about all the good things that they had. They had all the food they could eat and all that, but they were sitting in the desert kind of eating the very basic stuff that they were getting, even though that was, divine intervention. And that was attachment to sin. And so we have this attachment to sin after our purgation. We might be in a state of grace, but we're still thinking about and desiring and only wishing we could, but taste a little bit of the sin without it being unlawful for us to do so. And that happens in marriage as well, because a lot of men, not being able to control their passions, think that if I could just satiate like all of my desires and it's lawful, then I should. But practicing chastity between, you and your wife is super beneficial for your spiritual life, but it's also necessary for you to pursue the perfection, which is what we're called to do, and to manifest the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity. And like Christian said, to prefer God over all other goods. I mean, that's manhood. That's the ultimate man, is preferring, and for women as well, I'm speaking man generally, preferring God over all other goods, even to ourselves, even to our very life. And so that is like the ultimate goal. And if they don't get that message in the red pill movement, then it's bound to fail, and it's not going anywhere. That's all I'll say.
All right, we're gonna let Lily go, and then Joe. I didn't see if Sola or regular were first, but we'll figure it out then.
I just have as a Reformed Baptist and not a Catholic, I have just a clarifying question. Would y'all say that it's more masculine to be celibate and not be married?
Just as our Lord Jesus Christ was celibate and not married.
Okay.
Are you guys saying more masculine than getting married
No,
itself?
I'm not
or
trying
just
to
in
like dunk
general?
on you or anything. I'm genuinely just curious.
I'm just like if you had to pick, like, either is it more masculine to get married or to be celibate for life? The answer would be what Jesus did, which is celibacy for life. And I know this might be new to some people, and frankly, this was something that almost made me leave the church, to be honest, because I was dating my ex-girlfriend at the time. And I saw that it was a dogmatic teaching that that celibacy is superior. And I was like, no, like, maybe, so I tried to find a way to reject it. But eventually I humbled myself and I'm like, no, it's true. Like, there's we just talked about the biblical basis for it and like all that stuff. Like, it's affirmed, right? And again, that's like a thing, like, we have to know that we're not all created equal. We're all equal dignity, right? In the image of God, most definitely. But we're not literally the same. Some people are called to different things than others, and we are. Some people are called to be the shoulders of Christ, and others are called to be the legs. So it's not as if we are going to have the same role to play, and everybody's going to be built with different graces, essentially. So the humble aspect of it.
But the end goal of masculinity, I think we all could agree on, is, or the way to get there is self-mastery, right? That is the ultimate picture of masculinity. Would you not say that having a wife, having children, building a community, like all the things that come with family life and a strong family unit, is not something that is maybe possibly more sanctifying and more requiring of you to be mastered as yourself?
It's mastery. Most definitely it's mastery. I mean, again,
but you're saying since the pinnacle of masculinity is celibacy, then you're saying underneath that is having a family. I just don't know. Go ahead.
I can answer that if you want. I mean, the reason that, there's a reason that we want our clerics, for example, to be celibate. And once again, that's a teaching of the Roman rite of the church. So it's like, that's okay. That's actually a good teaching, because at the end of the day, like, I think men are called to some level of fatherhood, no matter where they are in life. Now, obviously, there's monastics and stuff like that. But, if you're a priest, for example, you're the head of a spiritual flock. You're cultivating those souls, and somebody needs to do that. And if you look at it hierarchically from the structure of the church, you actually put yourself above the fathers of the families of their own specific domestic churches. So in a way, it is a higher calling, because you're being the spiritual father to the fathers of actual domestic churches. You put yourself in a place above them as a pastor, as a priest, as a spiritual father.
Yeah, in the book of Isaiah, our Lord has promised many children. Now, obviously, the many children aren't physical children, since he was a celibate. They're spiritual children. So the running of a spiritual household, the production of spiritual children, and the seeking of spiritual goods will always be somehow greater than the material goods that come along with being a father of a household. And I say this as a father of a household, actually, by the way.
Yeah, it's not this could. I feel like some people might think this is like anti-marriage, but it really isn't. It's just recognizing the different styles of vocations for holiness.
Even the marriage
these are all holy vocations. These are all the priesthood, singly consecrated for life, marriage. All these Josephite marriages. These are all holy vocations that are designed for you to grow in holiness and to be with our Lord Jesus Christ. I wouldn't really get too. It's because we're talking about the red pill versus the crest pill that this is getting brought up, the celibacy aspect. But frankly, like, when thinking of vocations, you shouldn't be too worried about like, okay, which one's superior or whatever. I would say pray on what God's calling you to and go with that, because again, it's not a sin to get married. It's a very righteous thing, especially to have a chaste marriage. So I just want to reaffirm that.
Yeah, and to clarify, those in marriage are also called out in their way to follow the vocation of celibacy, and that comes through when St. Paul talks about being married because of the sort of passions that you have. It's assuming that through marriage, you're disciplining your passions. And actually, this is why we have the traditional practice of Josephite marriage, which eventually the marital use ceases. And this is what St. Paul means when he says, those who are married, those who have wives, be as they have none. The way in which you be as if you have no wife is because you're so detached from that material pleasure that you could completely live without it because of the self-control that you have. But anyways, I do have to go, Franco, but I do appreciate the chat.
Go ahead. Sola, you've had your hand up. Sola and Regular, you guys can go. I don't remember who was first, to be honest. We'll go with Sola first. Okay, Regular. Regular, go first. Hello?
I'm not hearing anything, Ariel.
I'm not either. Sola, go ahead.
I can't.
Sola, go ahead while he's fixing his mic.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys a question in regards to relations, and where do we have the distinction or draw the line in knowledge between when an action is lust and when it's love? I know it may sound silly, but like thinking like, okay, you could be very passionate for an individual, but it could be misguided passion where it could like tread in the territory of lust. Can anyone give me some clarification or advice on that?
Oh, 100%, dude, 100%. So, okay, love as we understand it, and again, I'm citing Catholic theology, is to will the good of the other. And the Bible does, when it talks about the compassion and all the traits of love, it all can be summed up within love is to will the good of the other. Now, there's different types of love that are reserved for certain, like, you know, friends versus a woman that you're married to, all this stuff, right? So, when it's to will the good of, for example, in a marriage, right? To will the good of your wife. If you are, for example, telling her to get an abortion right after you guys have made a kid, that's not what is good for her, and it's not what is good for the baby. If you, for example, commit anal sex with your wife, that is not good for her or good for yourself. So those actions are not qualified as love, but a distortion of love within the erotic form. So it would be lust, essentially. That's how I would put it, essentially, based on what I've understood of Catholic theology. But yeah, if Joe or Christian wants to or Evan or Lily want to touch on that, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's. Go ahead, Evan. Go ahead, Evan.
Go, Ryan. It's all you. You got it. Go, Ryan.
I think that was me. That was me that was talking. But okay, yeah. So I mean, yeah. What you're doing when you're lusting after somebody is you're looking at them as something that you can use to find pleasure from them. You know, it's this feeling that you're I want pleasure. I like what I'm seeing right now, and I want to use that to get something that I want. And this is why, for example, that you can see, and this actually goes perfectly into the red pill versus Christ pill debate, the difference between lust and love, because this idea of lust, I mean, why are you having sex with all these women? Why are you fornicating? Why are you not marrying these people? It's all because you're looking out for numero uno, baby. You're always looking out for number one. And that's exactly what the problem is that all it does is use people as objects for your own personal growth and stature. And I think that's a really huge issue, because to love somebody, I mean, there's no greater love than to lay down one's life for his friends. You know, you are supposed to be self-sacrificial. And this is why marriage is strictly permitted in marriage, or sex is strictly permitted in marriage. Because you become one flesh with the person. You serve one another for the purposes of participating in one of the greatest acts in human history, and that is the creation that God facilitates when you do such acts. That's the point. That's the purpose. So what happens when you separate, or what happens when you lust, is that you seek sex for yourself. When you seek sex for the ultimate good, which is the glorification of God Almighty, you're engaging in a loving act. And that's the difference.
That was fire. Evan, go ahead.
No, I just had a random question. Not that I'm like trying to debate Catholicism versus Protestantism, go ahead. But I do have a question as far as like your beliefs. So how would you then rationalize, or like, what would you say to the, like, Jesus is the bridegroom of the church. The church is the bride of Christ. Like, is Jesus spiritually married to the church, or what do you guys say to that?
Yeah, just how the priests marry the church, they are married to the bride of Christ. Jesus essentially, that's how I understand it, at least, that Jesus is married to the church in a spiritual manner, because the church is like, it's not as if there's like some chick that Jesus hitting up or whatever. It's like it's the whole body of believers, right? And he is the head of the church, and the church is that's why we get the church is woman, and the woman submits to the head of the house, the head of the head of her body. The head of the body is Christ. Right, so husbands are called to be the head of their household, all that stuff. It intertwines like that. What's up?
I don't know what that was.
What? I heard something.
Hear that?
I heard that too. But yeah, does that make sense? I mean, if anybody wants to have has a better explanation than what I just gave, please go ahead. Because this is good stuff.
Yeah.
Understanding this is very important for the red pill versus Christ pill discussion.
Well, Franco, you can't. You said you actually nailed it. You nailed it on the head. And just take everything that I just said, a minute ago, into context. That self-sacrificial love, that desire to cultivate you into somebody that glorifies God Almighty. That is how Christ feels about the church. That's the sort of love he has for the church. We're not talking about we're talking about that familial love. We're talking about that deep agape love that he actually has for us, that unconditional love.
I think that's perfect. I agree with that sentiment. And that even goes into, I'm looking at Ephesians 5:25-32 right now. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he may present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body.
It's so real. It's so, I love the Bible.
On the head.
It's 100% accurate. Yeah.
Let's see if regular man got his mic back up. Try going again.
Hello, my brothers.
All right.
Yeah.
Hello. How's it going?
Is it working now?
Yeah, there you go.
Sounds like it, yeah.
All right. So every stinking headphone and mic in my house is not working. So, man, you guys had a lot of things. I liked Ryan and somebody else. What was it, Megan or one of the gals that was in here hit a lot of what's important. Masculinity is all about Christ, right? He's the one who made it. He designed it. He designed the first man to exemplify it before he ruined it. And then the first man ruined it. And then he had to fix it for every other man, right? So in red pill movement is attractive for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons it's super attractive is because it has a philosophical component. And all philosophical components, you have to answer like origins, meaning, morality, destiny, all those things that attract us, that we as human beings, questions that we need to answer, right? And they have an answer for some of it. But it leaves a whole lot to be desired. It doesn't answer any morality questions. Christ does. For Christian masculinity, what God designed man to have virtue, right? To have gravitas, to have self-discipline, self-mastery, to be resilient, to manage your own expectations and conform them to the pattern of Christ, to have charity, to master your own emotions. And we look to Jesus for the pattern of masculinity. He designed it, right? So in the design of Adam, what did he do? He gave Adam a home. He gave him a job. He gave him a career. He gave him a mission. He gave him a name. He gave him a relationship with himself, all before he gave him a wife as a helper. And he gave him a wife as a helper so that he could continue that mission of procreation and taking dominion, making this world obedient to him. So I guess I would say pretty much everything that most of everyone else says so far is really just summed up and answered with looking at Christ and the design, the pattern of Adam before he blew it up, and the redemption of that design in Christ when he fixed it. And then the last thing, I'm going to stir up a hornet's nest with the Catholics in here. I think you guys may have, forgot that Jesus isn't single. He marries the church. We are his bride. So
we just said that earlier.
Yeah, we did talk about
I
that
did
earlier.
I did kind of bring that up. I just had a question. Yeah, I asked them about that for a second.
Okay, then that was probably when I was trying to fiddle with my mic.
Yeah, just
Badly, yeah.
My bad.
Just in summary, just so you don't just so you don't miss it out on. We pretty much talked about how it's a spiritual relationship that he's because it's not as if he's like dating like one chick or something. It's like he's it's a whole body of the church is a whole body of believers, and so that spiritual is so when priests, for example, when they come into the religious orders, they marry the church. In that spiritual sense, essentially, like Christ did. So that's pretty much how we would go about that. But yeah, again, we're not against marriage. We love marriage. Marriage is great. No one loves marriage more than us.
The church is the bride of Christ as well.
Yeah, so true. Ryan, go ahead. Then I think I saw Lily's hand.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have to obviously remember is that Christ is our model for masculinity, and I do think another thing that we have to kind of reconcile with that I think we've kind of done a bad job with is kind of letting, giving wayside to politics, and that's how we've gotten some of these red pill bros to kind of appear, because they do make some valid arguments in terms of like how men kind of get shafted during divorce, and how we have no fault divorce, how men get screwed over in custody when a relationship doesn't work out, they don't have any rights to their kids. So I think in order to actually represent God, we have to represent him in all facets of life, not just preaching on Twitter, or not just tweeting, but also in our laws have to be representative of the type of kingdom that we will ultimately want to build. And I don't think we do people any favors by not trying to level the playing field for men when it comes to like marriage, and we need to start I think trying to advocate for some legislation to kind of help in that facade, because that just kind of gives them more ammo to come at us with. And I think we need to have laws that kind of represent what we actually believe, and actually put our money where our mouth is. If we actually believe in the institution of marriage, then we shouldn't give anybody a way really out of marriage unless for biblical reasons. No fault divorce, that gotta go. It has to go. And we have to destroy these incentive structures that lead women to pursuing divorce. One of the things that actually really bothers, I want to just talk, this might sound unrelated, but women often get taken care of better by the government than they do by the church. And I think that's a problem, that their knee-jerk reaction when they're in need is to turn to the government for handouts instead of turning to the church to help them in a time of need. And I think if the church was more charitable and the church is more firm, the church is more bold, we would be the answer to a lot of solutions. So I think that involves us kind of getting serious about what we actually believe, and not just, preaching empty platitudes, but actually living it out in every facet of society.
So true. Lily, before Lily goes, real quick, I do want to say just a quick word for the Catholics that are in here. We have I think the Catholic Church is like probably like the number one like charity provider. When I was born, my mom was literally like was housed by a person that had no relationship, no blood relation, and it was just a person in New York essentially. So it really. There is help out there, but we just need to like get good at marketing it. We can't, because I think that like it's all this help is out there, but it's just, people don't really know about it. So I think that awareness that as in the information age, we have to keep on, providing that awareness. So yeah, go ahead, Lily.
Honestly, Ryan Popoff, that was awesome. I attached a tweet up here that says the red pill movement is essentially the same as feminism. Red pill guys have a lot of correct diagnoses, but the wrong prescriptions. Feminists have some correct diagnoses, but the wrong prescriptions, aka they're just like mad at the human condition. They have the same goal of degeneracy for men and women. And so I do want to land the plane a little bit here because we like to keep this right at an hour. So I wanted to just get any final thoughts about like how we can kind of move forward, because we identified that the red pill movement is a problem. We all know that feminism is a problem, and red pill and feminism are working together to destroy society from the inside and from the outside. So whatever, what are the solutions? What do you guys propose? And let's just go around quickly.
Joe, go ahead. Yeah, quickly.
Well, I just want to say that the obvious solution to this entire problem, I said this on my show, I'll say it again here in this space. We have to remember that the gospel transforms people. We came from a porn culture. All of us grew up in it. We came from a fornication culture. We all grew up in it. A divorce culture. We all grew up in it. But guess who else grew up in it? The entire Roman Empire grew up in a fornication culture. They grew up in a sexually degenerate culture. They grew up in all of those sorts of ways. And guess what the gospel did to the continent that contained the Roman Empire, the continents that contained the Roman Empire? It transformed them. It changed them as people. It allowed us to cultivate the greatest civilization, medieval Christendom, a philosophical renaissance that cultivated the most moral people in human history. That's what we got from the gospel. So if we return to the gospel, if we start evangelizing both men and women, we can transform them, have them overcome their pasts, just like the Romans did. Cutting it there.
So true. Yeah, I would honestly, I want to leave it at that. But I'll just say, like I said before, bring awareness to the fact that like there is help out there with all these things of providing, and not just with charity stuff, but also with the fact that there are like we have to really put on megaphone all like the authentic masculine examples, whether that be through marriage or the priestly celibate life. We want to like showcase all of these good examples and just show that like, look, there are real stories and this does work, and this is a lot more fulfilling than whatever you guys are trying to provide with your red pill solutions.
Evan?
No, I completely agree. And I think one word that summarizes tonight that we've heard over and over again is example. Jesus was an example. We need to be an example. Like, as followers of Christ, in order to even speak on this issue or condemn the red pill movement in general, or condemn some of the ideological views that viewpoint holds, you need to be living above reproach in complete humility and submission to God's sovereign will for us and what he asks and has designed for us. And if you can't do that, if you're not doing that, obviously if you slip up, there's grace, there's forgiveness. But at the end of the day, we should be completely striving to lead by example. And that means being in complete submission to God. And so, yeah, that's what I would have to say.
I want to see raise your hand emoji if you guys have a family, like are married, and let's go. That it? Oh, come on. Well, we can also, be leading by example by being chaste in our, in celibacy until we get married, of course.
Yes, so, exactly.
You're staying there for life. Yeah, there you go. That's
well,
cool.
Franco, thanks so much for hosting this space. Really appreciate it. And
yeah, thank you, Evan, for leading it.
Yeah, if anyone else is listening, just make sure you give everyone a follow, keep up with our content, because if it's not going to be us being the counterculture, changing the culture, talking, having good conversations, then who's going to do it? So appreciate all of you guys being here. Really, it's been really fun. We're trying to do this like every Monday night to get our week started right and just challenge each other and build community and such. And I know that's a very feminine way to like go about doing it, but community is important.
So Kayla, you're always going to be our favorite feminist.
Yeah.
Number one. Number one.
Trash. I was trying to celebrate that, and I thought you were going somewhere else with it. But appreciate you, Franco. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, Joe and Ryan and Sola, and then regular guy or regular man. So such an epic name. Appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. Let us know if there's any specific topics you really want to talk about, because we're all open to that.
Take care. God bless.
Cheers.
See you guys.
Riding with me, dying with me, or will I be another memory?